My name is David. I grew up in a small town where respect was wealth and humility was style. My father was a retired carpenter, simple, gentle, and proud of his work. When I married Sandra, I believed I'd found someone who saw life the same way. But I was wrong. Her parents wore money like armor and used words like weapons. And the day they decided to humiliate my father, they unknowingly began the process of losing everything they owned. It started when we invited my father to spend a weekend at Sandra's parents' home. They lived in a massive estate, fountains, marble floors, chandeliers taller than trees. My father arrived with a small bag and his favorite handmade cane. He smiled and said, "It's beautiful here. Your wife's parents must have worked hard." Sandra's father laughed and replied, "Worked? No, son, we managed smartly. You wouldn't understand that kind of business." The table went silent. I felt my chest tighten, but my father just nodded politely. "Maybe not," he said softly. "But I understand effort." Over dinner they started making jokes, subtle, poisonous jokes. Her mother whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, "It must be nice living simply. No bills, no ambition, no pressure." Sandra laughed awkwardly, but she didn't stop them. Later that night I found my father sitting outside on the porch, his hands trembling slightly. He said, "Son, people like that don't see the heart behind a man's hands. Don't argue. Just live better than their insults." I hugged him and said nothing, but deep down I promised myself I'd make them regret every word. A few weeks later, Sandra's father approached me about joining a property investment deal. He wanted to use my company's name to secure tax advantages. He said, "You don't need to put in money, just your name and legal standing. I'll handle the rest." It sounded shady, but I smiled and agreed. I wanted to understand his game, not stop it yet. I met privately with my lawyer. We went through every document, every property title, every shell company they used. The man who mocked my father's simplicity had been laundering money through his businesses, without even realizing the loopholes he left behind. I invested quietly but under a newly formed trust, the Robert Grant Trust, named after my father. Over the next few months, I restructured the paperwork so that any future default or debt collection would roll back ownership of several assets, including their mansion, into that trust. Sandra had no idea. Her father thought he was using me. I was simply letting his greed draw the map to his downfall. When the real estate market crashed 6 months later, his loans were exposed. He called me panicked. "David, we need to move funds fast. You're part of this deal, help me out." I calmly said, "I already did. I made sure your liabilities were transferred to the Robert Grant Trust, to protect you." He didn't understand what that meant, until the lawyers showed up. His house, his cars, even part of his land titles had legally shifted under the trust's name when his company defaulted. And that trust belonged to my father. That evening I drove my father to the mansion. Sandra and her parents were there, confused, half-packing. Her mother asked, "David, what is this nonsense?" I handed her the papers and said, "You remember when you mocked my father for being poor? That man now owns this house. Legally." Her father shouted, "You can't do this." My lawyer stepped forward. "He didn't. You did. You signed it all over months ago." My father stood there, speechless. He looked at me with tears in his eyes and whispered, "Son, I never wanted their home." I smiled. "It's not about owning it, Dad. It's about proving you were never beneath them." He didn't move into that mansion. Instead, we turned it into a community home for elderly artisans. Every wall decorated with hand-carved furniture, every plaque bearing his name. As for Sandra, she couldn't handle the fallout. She left a few weeks later, ashamed, broken by the silence of a man she never respected. Moral of the story: never mock someone who built their life with honest hands. Money can buy a house, but it can't buy class. When pride meets humility, humility always wins, quietly with grace. Because true revenge doesn't destroy, it restores. And sometimes the sweetest justice is giving back to the one who deserved it all along. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.